Oh, did I get you? In the wrong spot?
Mid-drink.
It's mid-drink.
I didn't know the countdown was coming. That's my bad.
I'm gonna keep this. I'm gonna keep that one in. I'm definitely keeping that one in. Welcome everyone to another Design Ops Aligned podcast. I am welcomed again by a very special guest who's come on the show before, who actually blew our YouTube channel like crazy with her with the last podcast we did with her. So welcome again, Miranda.
Thank you so much for having me again, and so shortly after doing it. I'm super excited.
I'm really shocked. I'm gonna take this as a first subject. Our team were in like awe how your podcast really grew so big. Or that episode. And I haven't checked the latest count, but it was over 200k views on there. It's our biggest views so far. And I want to get your take. Like, why do you think it blew up so crazy?
I don't know. It had to be a mix of things. I mean, your team does an excellent job at marketing, number one. So that had to be a bit of a push. But I think, like, if I think about the topics and stuff like that, I think I even mentioned it in the podcast. The flow, like in our podcast, just it seemed to go so well. And I think the topics that we covered were super, super valuable. I mean, I've had so many really nice messages shared my way about like how the podcast kind of changed their perspective. Or I think I shared one with you over on LinkedIn. It was kind of the last one of somebody willing to try again to try to increase the UX maturity of their team. Like I'm here for it.
Yeah.
And I think we just covered such a range of topics and it just flowed really nicely. And otherwise, I have absolutely no idea what kind of magic sauce you guys put into that.
I really don't know what the marketing team do, to be honest. I should look into what they actually do. But I really think it's what you just said. It's that point that you brought a lot of points in there that resonate with a lot of people. And you just mentioned about somebody wanting to try again to bring the maturity of their UX to a certain level within their company. Now, we've been going backward and forward about this, and I wanted to get your take, especially about this year. Do you think teams are going to struggle to show their business value within the design field? And let me put it into a better perspective. Now, this year, obviously last year, there was a big uprise in AI, and the maturity of it has now become stable, in my opinion. And I just want to get your take on it. Do you think this year we are going to see a massive struggle in UX or the design field trying to show their business value?
Interesting. Yeah, especially with the lens of AI. I disagree a little bit, at least in my experience with the AI kind of being mature. I think we're still quite a ways away from products being fully integrated with the potential that AI has to completely alter the way we actually design products. And mostly through the lens of personalization. I think that if especially UX teams do not quickly adopt what AI can do, then yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we will see people struggle to kind of promote their value. I can actually give you a lens. I just had a conversation. We've been going back and forth. I'm helping lead and oversee this AI project, and it's really the AI strategy of the company as it goes forward. And what we're really struggling with right now, especially more of a UX focused group, is that AIs and AI powered products and designs are extremely hard to test. Like right now, actually pretty much impossible until you fully build it, because AI fundamentally is like supercharging personalization, right? And how do you mimic personalization in a prototype or in any form of kind of static testing? Like right now, we don't have the tools to do that. So you can't even really test accurately or almost even validate the idea of an AI experience, a fully charged one, because the tools just aren't there. So yeah, I would definitely say if there isn't a proactive approach to figuring out like how AI is going to change the way that we have to design products as UX teams. And then also how we're measuring, understanding like how the business numbers and metrics might evolve or change the way that we track things, and kind of linking up with our product and engineering counterparts to figure out how that's going to evolve and change. I mean, yeah, I work at a Fortune 100 company, and we're still like total greenfield, really trying to figure it out. Everything else, the AI powered, we have an internal chatbot, we have some Miro AI tools that are kind of like speeding up our processes and stuff. I still think there's a lot to be figured out about efficiencies inside internal teams and how AI can help us with that. But when it comes to the actual product impact, I think we're going to be a couple years into trying to figure that out. And I would assume that's it for most, unless you're at the the explorative labs of Google or some of the way supercharged AI companies. What do you think, though? What's your thoughts on it?
I guess I've seen a lot of companies delve into the fact that it can speed up the processes dramatically. So, for instance, I'll take the research side of it. One company we know are starting to use this synthetic users. I don't know if you know. Yeah.
Yeah. I do.
So we're trying to say to them, well, testing with real people is much better. Still, trying to promote the actual core UX value, like, humans are so up and down, they're not linear kind of thing. And testing with real people gives you that real feedback. But I think what they did a test on people, their normal user base while using synthetic users. It was, I would say, I'm just saying rough numbers. I haven't got an actual number of a concrete number, but it was 95%, from my opinion, close enough to what our real users were giving. Now, what my take on it is that I think we're going to see a shift of AI making some of this kind of drag work or kind of like, tedious work much more efficient and effective. But what I'm thinking, sorry, let me go back. What my initial question was is that, showing their business value from a UX design perspective is that businesses see that when we speed up, we provide value. We take too long. That's what I'm not spoken to a lot of companies. You're going to challenge me on this one. I've spoken to a lot of people who just feel that the UX team or design team just take too long. And I believe that the AI side of it is going to show our value because we can produce something faster and at a certain quality. Now, what's your take on what I just said?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because we're talking about it from two different lenses. And it took me, I think the immediate kind of focus of AI is, what is it going to change about our processes internally and how we work as designers? But then what I was saying was more about what's going to change about the product that we need to kind of figure out how to design for. So on the former, I think the speed thing is really interesting because I agree. I definitely think there's kind of this, some semblance of a sentiment from especially kind of product folks that maybe UX takes too long or they want to cram too much into the, process. They want to do a bit of research and then a little bit of this and they want to validate it. And it's just like, and they're just like, when do I get my solution? Thank you. So I think with things like the synthetic users or kind of better utilizing research that's already been done in different ways to kind of craft personas so you don't have to refresh that research kind of all the time. I think that's, largely beneficial. I think it's beneficial for us because it doesn't require the tedium, which most of us probably don't enjoy. But at the same time, then the company is saving money as well. So I think that's where it's almost better to sell the adoption of these faster and more efficient processes back to the company to say, look, you were kind of griping about us taking 3 weeks. We figured out a way to do it in 1. Are you happy? And then, but like you said, you have to then maintain that quality. So I love that this company that you worked with did the real users and the synthetic users. That would be my main question. I'd always go for both. Like, we have to figure out if this thing even is going to be valuable to us and give us valuable insights before we just maybe go full bore with it and say that, yeah, we can do this at quality in half the time. Amazing. Yeah.
Do you think like we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot with this? And, you know, I'll actually quote what, also what I've seen on your social media posts. There are massive layoffs happening. It happened in America. It's now coming over to Europe. Britain are going through a massive amount of layoffs, especially in our design field. And do you think that we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot by bringing in these technologies and showing that, yes, it can be done with a few prompts? What's your take?
Yeah, really interesting. I think my first immediate thought is we don't have a choice. It's coming, whether we like it or not. But I do think we have to, but in my opinion, that just leaves so much more room for larger influence, for larger strategic stuff. Yes, do we have to expand our skill sets, like take kind of maybe, you know, our visual, just very kind of feature-based focus, you know, crafting web pages and stuff like that? And do we have to expand that into, you know, workshop and facilitation and getting a little bit deeper into like the problem solving side of things? Yeah, I do think we're going to absolutely see an evolution of our role. And we've kind of even seen that with the rise of like product designers, right? We went from UI designers or interaction designers, web designers, mobile app designers, but now we see product. And that's already getting us into this idea of influencing the strategy or direction forward. I think it's just going to be more of that. And it's probably going to push us to go a lot faster. So I think anybody getting into this field that's just kind of thinking they can think of the bare basics and, you know, design some pretty pages and stuff like that, I do think we're going to see, and I have said this in quite a few of my posts, I think we're going to see a reduction of visual focused roles because AI is going to be able to produce a lot of that for us, especially like there will always be a little bubble and a little space for the creative, crafty, beautiful, like almost unusable designs. but then the vast majority of where all designers work is in utilitarian designs. The Amazons, the other e-commerce sites, the Googles, those all have locked in design systems. So it's not about crafting kind of this visually intriguing, it's about crafting something that solves a problem or brings somebody a delight. So to your point, like, are we shooting ourselves in the foot? I don't think so. I think it's inevitable, but I do think we have to figure out where else we add value, because it's not just purely visuals. It has to be a lot more than that. And that's where I do think designers still have a huge opportunity to do that, but they have to pivot a bit. Yeah.
There's so much for me to dissect in that statement that you just said. I'm going to take the first one that's on the top of my head. So do you think right now, you know, the hype is about learning Figma, the hype is about learning, you know, all this visual stuff. Do you think that, you know, prompt engineering, let's use the word prompt engineering, do you think this is now going to be a mandatory skill set for us in the future?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love your questions. Yeah. I love it. I love it. So good. Yeah, absolutely it's going to be part of it, because yeah, you will have to know how to utilize AI to its full potential. Large language models, the databases that companies interlink with, like for example, we sit on absolute mountains of data. Is it accessible and easy to use for everybody? Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. It is so hard to find insights. It's so hard to find really valuable research. You have to sift through whether it's spreadsheets or some repo somewhere or whatever. But we already, just with the absolute beta version of kind of us taking a new approach to that with AI, super powerful. So yeah, I do think that will probably be mandatory.
I'm also going to take another stab at one thing. You mentioned about product designers. Obviously, yeah, I agree. Since the role of the product designer has come about, they have been really embedded. You know, I always think about business and development. I don't know why. There is a better terminology for it, but product designers have been really embedded inside of the business and helping the product shape, as well as kind of like they've moved away from being embedded in development teams, and they've been kind of subjugated in that kind of middle role. Now, my take on this is that a lot of designers, and you can quote me if I'm wrong with this one, my take is that designers struggle to have an influence on product backlogs. Now, what's your take on this?
100% agree. Full stop. That's the end of that. No, it is such a struggle. I think this is one of the absolute key things, that if you're going through any form of an education, a boot camp, even formal education, like I did with a bachelor's, like it is just not something you think about or is kind of taught to you as a aspiring or junior designer, that you're gonna have to influence a backlog. You kind of just think that like you'll have problems, somebody will tell you about them, you go away and use your best practices and design foundations to produce a solution. So yeah, I think this is one of the kind of biggest shared problem amongst designers as a whole community. And I think the same would go for researchers as well, or copywriters. I've seen the struggle kind of with all UX disciplines be that influencing of that backlog. And I'm going to, before I say my opinion on it, what do you think? Like, do you agree? And what do you, if you do, like, what would you think the reasons for that are?
It ties into, again, one of those things I've noticed during my career. And I believe that since we've kind of diminished the BA role, product designers or generally design teams are not there to help influence some of the design decisions that come in. Now, that's my take. That's certainly my take, what I've experienced, being working in Switzerland, where we had a lot of BAs, and, product teams will come with ideas. They would churn it into a business language where, the BA would chop it up, and then we would give our feedback and say, hey, this is not the right direction to go. And then they would be the middle person to kind of go backward and forward to the product manager. So that's my take. I think what's happened is that since the diminish of these BA roles, the team doesn't have somebody to speak up for them. And generally, and don't get me wrong, I don't like to always gaslight product managers. I also see it from their point.
We love them.
I see it from their
we
love them. We do. I'd have to see it from their point of view, that they have tight deadlines. They're there to make return of investment. They need to make ARR. There's a lot on them. But what I've found is that they rush into it without really having data behind them to back them up. Whereas designers would say, hey, look, we've got this idea backed up with data from speaking to our customers, from, doing surveys, and then it's kind of fallen on deaf ears. And I don't know what's happening with that. I really don't know why the culture is like that. Now, that's just my take on it. What's your take?
I think, to answer your last point directly, I think the reason it falls on deaf ears is because most UXers are atrocious at speaking product. They sit here and say, again, maybe this is a little bit kind of anecdotal or colloquial, but they talk about empathy and feelings and user satisfaction, and product is like, yo, I gotta hit my numbers. I have to report in Q3 about if I hit these or not. So we're essentially speaking two different languages, and that's why a lot of UXers really butt heads with their product folks. But I think, honestly, there needs to be an acceptance, specifically from the UX side, that, and I think we mentioned this last time in the podcast, it's product's head is on the chopping block. Whether they like it or not, whether anybody likes it or not, they're the ones that have to report the numbers up, and they're accountable. UX is not accountable. That CEO isn't going to come stomping to your desk and say, UX designer, why is my conversion rate not what it needs to be? Like we're just not really there. So if you feel like you have this kind of tension with product, it's we're not, we're not as kind of looked over. But what I would say is that it's also the way to teach your product folks the value of considering UX, because exactly what you said, falling on deaf ears, but then also super business-centric. What I find is a lot of product folks aren't super great at thinking about the consequence of ramping up conversion, ramping up click-through rate. That's probably why a lot of things like dark patterns happened, right? Because it was just like, at all costs, we got to hit these numbers. But then it was like, whoa, actually, there's a long-term effect that we're maybe not considering. Or it's like, yeah, you push somebody to convert, but actually they're never coming back because it was a super stressful experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I really think at the end of the day, it boils down to UX and product speaking incredibly different languages, but UX being the user-centric kind of person, I believe it's somewhat of their responsibility to have that empathy for their internal stakeholders as well, figure out how to speak that language. And that also empowers UX to be able to showcase the value in a business impactful way. Because if you start to, sus metrics and time on task and all these other things, it's in one ear and out the other. But if you say time on task has a direct correlation with click-through and conversion rate, so let's throw it out to test so I can give you more confidence before you just spend 4 weeks developing this feature, whether or not you think it's going to go well. That's the power. That's the power of UX, but it's a very different mental model, I think, than most designers specifically are kind of utilizing.
You hit the nail on the head, because I'll take it from our perspective of Design Ops Align. We don't speak design ops. When we go in to speak to our clients, we try not to mention anything about design ops.
Okay.
We're change management on steroids. That's what we are. We're literally change management on steroids. We come in and we're trying to change the culture, but we don't use the word design ops because nobody understands what design ops is. And then it ties into the same with UX. Do you think we're teaching people in this field only the UX jargon and that business? Sorry, let me rephrase it again. Do you think that we're teaching people in this field only the UX jargon and not the business language? And let me put it in a better way. Are we not doing a good job of teaching people in this field how to translate their UX into a business valued sentence? What's your take?
Yes. Yes, again. Full stop. 1,000,000%. Yeah. Exclamation point. Yeah. I mean, 100%. I personally wasn't taught that. I mean, it's like 12 years ago now I was doing my formal education, but yeah, that was absolutely not the side of it. It was very arts and crafts. It was very, like kind of, the people want to be able to shop, or they want to be able to browse this thing or that thing. And it's like, I want to make a pretty picture for that. And that can help them kind of do that. But, so, I mean, not having looked into kind of what formal education is doing, or what, explicitly some of the boot camps and things like where people are getting their education are doing. But what I see and what I get back from my audience is absolutely that. It's, this wasn't, I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't thinking about this. I think it even goes further, not even being able to showcase the business value, but even to be able to showcase the rationale of your design. Like, why did you even do the thing in the first place? Yeah. Which should, like you said, kind of incorporate what the business aim is in the first place, right? You built this design not just for fun or just to, get a smile from a user. You are building it to make this company money in some way or save them money in some way. So yeah, I don't think there's a lot of great content out there really preparing designers, or even if you are a designer, maybe in a lower level company or a startup, and you are just doing the visual stuff, but you're stuck. That's the big thing. I think a lot of people can get started with kind of I would say the basics, but then a lot of people get stuck and they don't know how to move forward. And I think this kind of business understanding or being able to articulate your value to the business is why people get stuck a lot of the time. Yeah.
Then let me put it in a bit in a different way. Do you think it is the responsibility of designers to speak the business language, or do you think it's the responsibility of design leaders? People who are leading teams, like managers, directors, you name it. Do you think it's their job to speak the business value amongst the business table? What's your take? Wait, okay. Let me before you answer. Me and you have done development, so we come from a development background. And working with developers, you get those developers who just want to code. They don't even want to speak to you. It's like, don't even come to my desk. They're like, please email me. And you're like, okay, So it's like, you get those type of people. Do you think it's one-to-one with designers? They want to just design and they need somebody on that kind of management level to speak on their behalf of the business value of their designs.
Yeah, it's really interesting on the development side, because I was actually just talking to a development friend of mine, and he was like, it's crazy when we get into these meetings and we're still discussing whether we should do this thing or not. And if he's a developer and that's kind of it is, I genuinely think that we could probably have development still at the very end of the process. Yes, does it create better ways of working? Yes, is more input beneficial to the process? But if you have so many heads kind of going at it and saying, this is ideal, this is impactful, it's impactful to the business and to the users, we're good, let's build it. The developer can be like, I don't care what it is. I can just develop it and then I can walk away. That's chill. That's fine. But to your question, do you think it's the designer's responsibility? I think, yeah, I think it is absolutely every individual's designer, even at a basic core level, because you are not just solving user problems. I'm sorry to break it to you, there's not one audience that you are focused on. You are also solving business problems. You have two people, two sides of the coin that you need to be serving. If you take an isolated approach to only solve user problems, I genuinely think you're doing a disservice to the company, but also to yourself, because you don't have the full picture. I think that's why a lot of designers get frustrated as well. It's I'm getting the pressure, I'm getting asked to do this and that, left and right, but they don't ask why. They don't have the knowledge of the business side, so it just seems like a bad idea to do that for users, but they literally can't push back because they don't have the knowledge of the business side. You put yourself in a really bad position if you don't try to understand that side of the business. Now, do I think a junior designer needs to talk about the overarching company goals? No.
Yeah.
Does a mid-level? No. Do you need to try to influence at that scale? Absolutely not. But if your product manager comes to you and says, this, we have to implement this feature because it's going to ramp us up conversion by 10% and we have to hit that number. And you can't be like, actually, I think that's going to hurt conversion for these reasons. You just kind of need to equip yourself with as much information and kind of knowledge and experience as possible so that you can push back on those potentially bad ideas. Because otherwise, then you think about it from the other foot. Is it the product manager's or product owner's responsibility to fully understand UX? And I think the answer is no. I think there's an overlap for sure, but I don't think it's we shouldn't have product managers doing wireframes or kind of anything like that, or fully encompassing the full design process and being able to understand that. So yeah, I do think I think it's necessary.
It's a hard one, because you go into a role, and especially in our field, I think, you have to learn so much. You got to learn, good UX designers and good UI designers. And again, I believe they're completely different. I know that you believe they're one, but, there's so much to learn. And then you come in and it's like, wow. And you can never learn everything of a business. You know what I mean? And sometimes I'm probably going to get blasted about this one, but sometimes I think these UX designers need to lighten up a bit and bring a bit of joy into their work. Sometimes they're a bit too user-centric, and I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah. Because you can get that. You can get that aspect where they're fully focused on the user experience, and you can lose some of that business aspect. That's just my take. I know other people are like, no, if it's fully user, then it's for the business. And I'm like, well, okay, I get that as well. But it's a tough one. It is a really, really tough.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I do think there's, I would say a good portion of designers kind of take this approach, like, I am for the user. I am the user representative.
Mm-hmm.
I will hold so strongly to that if anybody pushes back, right? Like, no matter what, I'm here to evangelize it. And it's like great, like super great. But again, it just kind of puts you in this position where, like, then if you go up against a product owner who's like 100% business centric, and you're like, why are you always about the number? And then why are you always about like feelings and empathy? Yeah. And it's just, that's honestly just a headache situation to be in.
I've seen them. I've actually seen them. It's one of those ones where you don't know where to look in the meeting. It's like they're going at each other, and you're just like, okay, let them go. let them go for it. It's just like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then it ties into this whole thing. Like, what do we do, or what advice would you give to people who have to deal with these difficult stakeholders? Now, you've got a lot of experience, and especially working, we'll probably bleep out the name of the company you work at. So let me use the name for the time being. So working up, you must be dealing with a lot of high stakeholders who have a lot of opinions in there. I can see you're ready to answer this question. I can. So what advice would you give to everyone to deal with difficult stakeholders?
Yes. Okay. Before I answer that, I wanted to expand on the last kind of like user-centricity point. So sorry, I just had another thought.
Yeah, go for it.
I think we're talking about designers who are just like users, and like, if you don't care about the users, like, hit the road. But actually, at the end of the day, like, if you think about how clever you can be about incorporating really like nice experiences for a user, but you can describe them in a way that adds value to the business, you'll probably win those arguments a lot more, or win those debates a lot more. I think, like, let's think about animation. Animation always gets cut from more utilitarian kind of designs and stuff. But then I think about things or illustrations, like money, time, like a specialty kind of thing. All that stuff always get cut. And then you end up with this kind of like dry experience, or very, not enjoyable. But if you look at like a case study like MailChimp back in the day, that had a massive impact on their company. So many people enjoyed so much about their experience. What, from a branding perspective, right? People were screenshotting the little illustrations and sharing them on social media. And that just like had this organic growth for them and stuff like that. So if you have those things in the back of your mind, and you can present that kind of rationale and business impact, even whether it's through case studies or through whatever, wow, are you like in such a good position? If you just come in and be like, this will delight users, and that's all you got, you're gonna be right, just upset all the time, because you almost never win influencing, you never win you never get to influence the backlog, or you never win a debate with a product owner. It's just like, equipped yourself with that, and you actually might be able to push better experiences, and therefore you are truly a user advocate, because you're doing whatever it takes to give them that at the same time. So like, that's where I think that's super important as well. Like, you don't have to lose that user advocation while learning that business side, like, yeah.
Yeah, no, agreed. But then it's a hard one, isn't it? It's like, let's take animations. Really, really good. That's a really good example, because micro interactions always tend to get dropped.
Totally.
Now, okay, this is a good one. This is a really, really good one. How do you build up a business case to say, hey, this is going to bring XYZ value, or, just saying, okay, we've done a case study and by looking at our competitors, they do interactions like that. Thing which is so, how should you say, beneficial to the user experience, but brings a lot of overheads on the development side. How do you pitch something like that? Now, this is a really good one, because a lot of us tried to do micro interactions with Figma. So I would like to take your take on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly that, right? Maybe if you do one micro interaction here or there, you have to be realistic. Like, at the end of the day, you have to be realistic. Like, is that going to truly impact the user experience and therefore the business? Like, just straight up, you need to be very real with yourself, because if you do one now, or if you do something like MailChimp, excuse me, and you actually incorporate this feeling of micro interaction, this feeling of kind of smooth or fun or kind of whatever their branding messages were across the experience, then you have true impact. Then that's memorability. It's potentially lifetime value. It's potentially retention, because they enjoyed that experience so much, they might be more likely to come back. But I mean, I think, myself included, I wanted to do a jazzy, like smooth scrolling, nice little interaction design. And yeah, maybe it would have taken the developer a week and a half to do it, would have pushed out, timelines. And I've had so many of those types of things cut. But I do look back at the end of the day, I'm like, would that really have an impact on the experience for our users? Like, this one tiny little action, would that have really done it? Or did I just really want it?
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
I think it's a two-way street at the end of the day, and think about the true value that you are kind of adding at the end of the day, and is it worth it? Yeah.
It's such a hard one, because, and I'm so glad you brought up that one, animations, micro interactions, because it's one of our design facets that I see a lot of people do. But it comes with so many overheads due to factor of not development, but brand identity, tone of voice. If you've done a semantic differential with your marketing team, most of the time there's nothing around fun or play and stuff like that. It's always around innovation, seriousness, etc. And then so imagine you get past that bit. Then it's like, does your design system support these micro interactions? And does it have a family of micro interactions with all the other different elements? And by the time you get down to it, it's just like, oh, I'm sod this. I'm just going to forget this. Just keep it very static and simple.
Keep it simple. Yeah.
So,
that's so true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely agree. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go on. No, you go.
No, I just want to absolutely agree, because it's not just an isolated thing, right? If you're going to add this kind of like, I don't know, a glittery effect to this button, well, you have 10,000 other buttons across this product experience. Like you said, is it a systematic approach? Or is it this one-off that you think will be just kind of neat? So yeah, I think that's a very good perspective to have.
Yeah. I think in all my time being a designer, you try your best to get in as much fancy stuff, but then it just boils down to, as you just mentioned, is this something I want, or is it something that's going to bring that business value once they come to the application or website? So, very good. I liked your example. I really did like your example.
I think it's the struggle just as well, because I feel you feeling it, which is like, it makes really good portfolio case studies as well, right? For other designers, specifically. Oh, you got that animation in?
Yeah.
And usually no, it didn't actually get it in the live product, but I think that's where we feel that pressure. It's like designer to designer, super impressive animation talent, micro interactions. Like, it just feels so nice. But yeah, so that's a real struggle, and it's something you have to combat with the idea that business value, time cuts, and stuff like that. And I think any good kind of hiring manager, anybody who's in that position, would kind of challenge and look for the real side of it as well. But I just have to say that I think there's a lot of pressure to have those types of things in your case studies as well, which does make it a little bit of like conflicting. Like, what do you actually want from me? Do you want the cool stuff, or do you want the real stuff? Yeah.
If I saw on somebody's portfolio that they did get those micro interactions, into the product and they explained how they do it, I would hire that person without that.
Yeah, you won this over. Oh, get on my team.
You are like, the gold star member, because you were able to negotiate, speak. You were able to speak some development language. If your product had a design system, you were able to convince your design teams to put it in, and that is a lot of work. So
it is, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, sorry. I know I took that topic. So wait.
I loved it. I absolutely love it. I can't even remember the question I asked you before. I think
difficult
it was something
stakeholders.
around...
I wrote it down just in case.
Yes, that's it. I saw you took the pen now, and I was like, oh, what's she doing?
I knew I wanted to take the conversation elsewhere, but I didn't want to forget.
All right, so let me rephrase the question. I'm going to keep all this in, by the way. I'm not going to edit any of this out, so I'm just going to keep it straight. So a lot of us in this field, on a day-to-day basis, have to deal with difficult stakeholders, and they can range from, being very opinionated to being very, how should you say, pushback. Somebody who just wants to keep pushing back. Now, I mentioned, and we don't need to mention the company. I don't want to bleep out anything, but you work in a very well-known company, very famous, well-known company. Actually won a refund on my last place I went to. But it's, no, you do work in a very well-known company. So I would like to get your take on how you've dealt with difficult stakeholders and opinionated stakeholders, for any of your work.
Yeah, totally. Actually, I feel like you were on my TikTok live just because this question came up and I answered it literally last week. So
okay.
Perfectly timed. So I've had to think about it a little bit, but I think there's many different kind of scenarios with different types of difficult stakeholders, right? I think the one that I run into the most is very opinionated stakeholders. They may come into a design session and say, this shade of blue reminds me of my nursery, and that doesn't make sense for our company, or something along those lines. But then you also might have another stakeholder like, well, I really like this color of blue. And then the meeting is off the rail and you get absolutely no valuable feedback. So one of the scenarios that I run into a lot is, maybe if you have differentiating opinion, but very highly vocal, especially with execs and stuff like that, they're not shy to speak up. But then if you have a conflicting, you're just not getting any review feedback that's actually valuable to you, just have this kind of debate going on back and forth. So one of the things that I do very, very practically, if I know that I'm about to go into a session with stakeholders will just completely take the session off the rails, is that I force them to not speak. And I do this by a way of getting through the design review. And I've actually kind of coached a lot of my lead designers to do the same, which is essentially it's silent time while the review is happening. People can leave comments as they go through. And then at the end, you can decide if you want to open up the discussion, or you can add additional structure, which is to pick 3 of your top comments, your top points that you want to discuss. And then everything else will be taken offline. If that's, again, even too much, depending on that level of difficulty of stakeholder, you can almost take everything offline as well. I think I've taken the approach as well to do more individual kind of feedback things, but that's just so much more time consuming. That overhead is just almost too much for any project. So kind of in summary, what I always suggest if you have these highly opinioned stakeholders is to add more structure than you think would ever be necessary. Because I think, you have this preconception that these guys get paid a lot of money. They're way up there. They're going to be the best of the best. It is not the case almost ever. If anything, they're worse because they're, I don't know, too far away from the day in and day out or something. So I think of it as you're trying to coach, I have to say this, and maybe I'll get canceled for it as well, is that the best advice I've ever had about kind of dealing with presentations to really high level executives is to treat them like they're toddlers.
Okay.
to treat spoon feed them the information as if they have absolutely no context. And I think that still I use it. It's so good. It works really well, because especially execs and stuff like that, you have that 30 minutes, 45 minutes. They've forgotten everything that happened before. They're going to forget about it afterwards. They have to consider 60 topics a day. You get that small little window. So you have to get them up to speed to where they give you valuable feedback and cannot think about it later.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say add more structure, more context than you would ever think would be necessary to speak to somebody at that level. Additionally, the thing you have to do is prepare more than you've ever prepared. If you have a really highly opinion stakeholder, you're going to come in and get challenged for this component and the rounded corners and whatever else you've put in there. Annotate the absolute crap out of your designs. And I'm talking leave it on the designs, leave it in the Figma file, in the slide presentation, whatever you have to do, because they'll come back. They'll come back to that file and think about it more and have more opinions. But if you have all the information there already, that can really help you say when they challenge something, it's oh, well, actually in usability testing, it proved this. Oh, actually, we ran an A/B test on that, and this was the result. You can't remember everything, but also be very good. And before you even go into those sessions with stakeholders, try to think like them. What do you think that they're going to challenge you on? And have that already ready and answer that in your initial voiceover. Those are some of the tactics that have really worked for me in preparation with difficult stakeholders. I have to say one last thing though. You will not have rationale for every pixel. You just won't. It just doesn't work that way. Prepare for that as well. Say, this is still up in the air. We're exploring a few options. We're actually going to run these 3 versions through usability testing to kind of get more confidence behind the solution, whatever it may be, but have it articulate your plan. You've already considered that maybe you don't know enough to have a confident single option. You can address that as well. So that was not organized, but those are a slew of tactics that I've used to handle difficult stakeholders.
Do you think designers should document every step that they take within their process? Hey, this is idea 1, and now this is how I got to idea 6. Do you think designers should really document how, well, let me take it in a better way. Not only just documenting their ideation from one place to another, but also, do you think they should document, hey, we use this UX law, and et cetera, et cetera. Do you think they should do that?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Good.
I would die.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is have 20 explorations. I think actually a quite a common mistake is that designers show the 20 iterations of the solution that they put forward. Do not do that. Looking at you, whoever's watching this, do not do that. That is a huge mistake. It is so overwhelming for anybody, whether it's just your peer or a high-level stakeholder, but especially to a high-level stakeholder. Show your recommendation, your end result. It might have taken you 2 weeks, 50 iterations. No one cares. No one cares.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and maybe you ruled some things out. You didn't go with this, you didn't go with that for this reason or that reason. Great. If you feel like that's going to come up in the session, yeah, document that. Say, we went with this because of this reason. Or have it in your just prepared. You have all that knowledge. You have the reasons you did the things. Have it ready, but you do not need to document every step and every little kind of thing. It's just too much overhead and too time consuming, and no one cares, and they won't be able to consume it.
Yeah, that's, you hit that one in the head. No one cares. No one really cares about that UX stuff. And this is just from my opinion. I think product managers, they don't really care that, hey, we use this rounded pixel because it's it goes on to the brand identity. They don't care about all that stuff. And what they do care about is, at the end of the day, that product making bang for buck. I know we're coming up to the last bit of the podcast, but I want to get your take on this. Now, obviously, me and you are going to get cancelled after this
Yeah,
question.
we're canceled. We're done. Try to do a
We're
monthly
cancelled,
podcast, get canceled on the first one.
Yeah, it just happens. It just happens.
Yeah.
I want to get your take on this, bro. Why do you think... okay, let me rephrase this in a better question. It is the responsibility for a design team or a design leader to be responsible for the user experience of something. Now, I've never seen user experience designers or designers in general shape a product or build a product or build an idea for the product. Then, yeah, they may give suggestions, but I've never seen them kind of formulate a product roadmap or anything like that. Now, where I'm going with this, and I've seen it happen in my career, why is it that people have so much control and opinion over our designs and what we do, but we have no control over what the product makes? And again, we're going to get cancelled after this show, so I want to get your honest opinion. Now, before you answer, I'll give you some caveats. In my experience, I have just had, a product manager or product director kind of like dictate everything that's happening on the UX front. And his reason being was, it was his product. It's his baby and he should have full control of what happens. Yeah, I looked at him in the face like that. I said, okay, so let me get this right. You're in charge of the product, but you've hired skilled professionals to be in charge of the user experience, but you still dictate what they do and stuff. Now, what's your 2 cents on what I just mentioned in that whole scenario and your opinion?
Yeah, I think I honestly think it's actually really, really, really simple. The reason that everybody and their mother has an opinion on what the design solution is because everybody uses products. Everybody uses apps, everybody uses websites, and therefore they have an opinion about it. I can't count the amount of times that I'm in a design review and I'll have one of our senior stakeholders be like, well, I was just using Apple Notes the other day and they do it like this. It's very subject to whatever their own experience is. And it's because they see themselves as users as well. And because they are probably one single user. The reason we don't get to have opinions, it's not as easy for us to kind of be heard about our opinions about roadmaps and things is because nobody's using roadmaps. I don't use roadmaps in my daily life. I could be a mother of 3 and I'm still using an app. I'm not using a roadmap. That's really what it boils down to, is that the product and the things, products and apps and websites and digital, interfaces are in the hands of every single person. Therefore, every single person feels they're entitled to have an opinion about it. That's really what it boils down to. The CEO head of this company that you just gave an example of, that is a very common scenario. I can't think of a designer who hasn't run into this exact situation, whether it's the founder of a company or it's just some CEO of a company. It's my thing, so I want to do it my way. And I think a lot of startups, it's like a really big thing for startups as well.
Yeah.
And it's just, you've hired professionals to do that. And I do think it is our like the UXer's job to try to educate as to why your singular opinion is probably invalid. Let me tell you about your users. Let me tell you their wants and pain points and needs. And then we can move forward. But bar none, there will forever exist very opinionated founders and people who just I want it this way. And guess what? Their product is probably going to burn and fail. Like so many do. There's such a high turnover of products and stuff like that. Maybe it'll last for a few years. Maybe they'll, get it to a certain point and it'll have to sell, whatever. But yeah, if you look at the longevity and the successful companies who have longevity, they do consider their users more than their individual kind of point of view. Mm-hmm. But they'll always exist. You're bound to run into them. And I'm sorry that you have recently. But yeah.
Do you think that's what it is? Do you think these product directors need to have somebody on a product director level focused on the UX? Because you always have a product director, then there's product managers and POs and what have you. Do you think that's the reason why this field is so frustrating, is that we don't have a product manager director focused on the UX? Do you think by having somebody like that, it could solve a lot of the issues, from your opinion?
I can tell you point blank, doesn't make a difference. We in the company that I work, we have directors of UX, and even though they're equals, product and then whatever, design or research or whatever, they're not equals. It is still an uphill battle for UX to influence product side. And especially if you exist in a product driven organization, it's always going to be numbers. It's always going to be product focused. And it matters the UX maturity, how much influence UX disciplines actually have for the direction of things. I want to say, because I think you brought it up before, and it was all around kind of the struggle of talking about the value of UX. And we talk about these difficult stakeholders and stuff like that. I think it really does come twofold. You will have very difficult stakeholders who maybe have experienced excellent designers who have done their absolute best to influence the direction of the product for the better. Don't want to hear it. Absolutely closed ears, never want anything to do with it. But in my experience, more often than not, is that they've worked with really shit designers.
Okay.
Straight up, if they've come from somewhere really low level, inexperienced, kind of just tell me what I need to do, pixel pushers, because there's still plenty out there, they have absolutely no idea what a good UXer can bring to the table. So yeah, they're going to operate in this mentality of like, do this and do that and do this and do that, while having zero clue that they're not reaping the full benefits of what our discipline can bring. And it is our responsibility, if we want to climb that uphill battle, to try to show them otherwise, to say, hey, hold up. I've more than just Figma, skills over here. Like, can we talk about it?
Yeah.
Because genuinely, I have had this exact experience. If you try to get down to the root of like why they're just like this, and they don't want to hear it and all these other things, it's just purely lack of experience with like a really good designer. And
wow.
of course they're going to think that, right?
Yeah. Wow. What an amazing answer. I'm not even going to lie to you. What an amazing answer you just gave to that question. I can't
sure, all the product managers are just going to love that.
They're going to be like,
it's not us, it's you. Educate us, please.
But you hit the nail on the head. You really, this is why I, wanted to bring you on again. And again, as I mentioned offline with yourself, the stuff you say really does resonate. And you do, what you just stated is a really good example. They've worked with people that weren't experienced, that were pixel pushers, and they're used to that pixel pushing mentality where they kind of have brought that on to other places. And, that's an amazing answer, Miranda. And I'm really glad we left that one to the last, and that was like an amazing
Hopefully
wrap
people
up.
make this far in. Yeah.
Amazing. Really great answer. Miranda, it is now 2025. And I want to get your take. What is in store for the UX Survival Guide this year?
Promo.
Go for it. The stage is yours.
Gosh.
The stage is yours.
No, it's super cool. I'm glad you asked, just because I've literally been spending the last few days like buckling down, like figuring out like the direction that I want to be taking my content. Because I started a little over I think 2 years ago now, and I was just like, aspiring designers, junior designers, everybody. I just want to reach everybody. But I have found kind of not only looking at the feedback that I'm getting from my audience, but also what really like excites me and brings me like real value is is helping designers. This is really on topic actually for a lot of what we just talked about, but is demonstrating their value beyond design. There's a lot of content creators out there that I think can absolutely help you be that pixel perfect, craft beautiful, elegant, functional, pragmatic designs. But I want to help you sell it. I want to help you influence that roadmap. I want to help you, figure out how to win those challenges, deal with those difficult stakeholders, and with all of that, as you expand your toolkit, up level in your career. So I think we're in a really tough market right now as UX designers. I'm also looking at potential layoffs in months' time. And I think we all kind of need, with all my years of experience, I want to be helping the people that are a little bit more experienced, but in a tough situation, or like we were talking about earlier, might just be feeling stuck, not heard by stakeholders, whatever it may be. And like I said before, which if you still have that sticky note right behind your head, communication is key for so many different reasons. And that's the stuff I want to be focusing on. That's the skill set that I want to be helping designers grow in.
Wow.
This year.
So this year, wow, this is going to be an amazing year for yourself. So
fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yeah. We came across you with your content, really, really focusing, really I looked at some of the content that Vicky sent to me, and, it was really kind of structured on how you can present yourself and also do X, Y, Z. But I think you're now moving into that. You're moving into other space. It's kind of the business value. What does design bring? And I think that's where it is. It's really the case where, we need to show our value, and it's going to come thick and fast. And like I mentioned in the beginning, people are going to lose their jobs if they don't show their value. So I'm really glad you're doing that. I'm absolutely amazed that you are doing that.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I just want to say, I don't think this podcast will probably come out before it happens, but I'm going to run an objective setting workshop, or that's the aim for the end of this month, which is going to be all around articulating the impact that you want to be having, right? Or how you want to grow as a designer. So I'm actually super excited about that. I hope there's interest.
I'm actually getting this show out quicker now, because the show I'm doing with you is actually not part of the series.
So we're not on a schedule.
We're not on a schedule. We're going to just be throwing it out very, very quick. So,
nice.
Okay. I hope the audience love this one. And yeah.
Cool.
Miranda.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I love our chats. I love your questions. It could not be better.
Thank you so much.